I have a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, and just last night I was having a conversation with her. And I said, you do know your WhatsApps cause me anxiety? And she said, why? I said, because you send WhatsApps, and every single sentence is a WhatsApp. So I read your messages, I answer with one letter word, K. It means okay. You will then reply with a thesis. But instead of bunching the thesis into a single WhatsApp, you are sending me individual. So by the time I log on, it says there are 48 WhatsApps from you. You're causing me anxiety. And for those of you who do that, stop it. Write like they taught you in school. Full stop, new paragraph. Write the WhatsApp. It does have the option to say read more. I genuinely think there are people on anxiety treatment because of you guys sending WhatsApp messages like this. But I think one of the challenges we have in our modern time today, and I'll come back to this in a minute, is simply this, that we talk in the language that we understand. A few years ago, Dell had a similar challenge. This guy, Jeff Jarvis, a journalist, very, very well regarded in the US, back in the era of blogs, went and wrote a blog about a particular customer experience he'd had at Dell. And these were the comments that were left on that blog. Dell sucks. Dell lies. Put that in your Google and smoke it. Now, immediately, of course, what happens in large organizations when this happens? They call the marketing team. They don't call the sales team. They're definitely not calling finance. And if they're smart, they will leave legal and compliance out of it. Because the best answer from legal and compliance is give me 2 weeks and I'll give you an opinion. They call the marketing team. And the marketing team, now faced with a duality of options, this is what I call the Neo-Matrix moment. If you take the blue pill, then you will continue to do what you know. But if you take the red pill, and down the rabbit hole of accountability you go, where you expose your brand and become vulnerable and humanized to your customers, then you have a better chance of surviving in this modern era. This was in the days of blogs, when you needed to open a blog on WordPress and then build around it. What do you think today? Every single person with an email address can become a blogger on Twitter. And they can do so anonymously. They could be in your organization sharing with you internal company information and publishing it for the public to see. In that era, the game changes for us. It changes because it means all of a sudden, whereas we had a Chinese wall between what happens inside and what happens outside, the wall exists no longer. The inside is out and the outside is in. But delivering customer experiences that are sometimes negative is a path of the course when you're building an organization. So why am I telling you this? Well, to make the following point. Uncle James has been alive long enough to remember a time when there were these things called a marketplace. And you went to the market and you sold your product at the marketplace. And next to you in the market were other merchants who sold their product at the marketplace. And the marketplace was a centralized place of commerce. And the customers came to you and you sold them your product. To compete in the marketplace, there were 3 rules. Rule number 1, be easy to find. Rule number 2, be easy to buy from. And rule number 3, make it easy to sell to me. These were the 3 rules. The world then moved from this era of the marketplace to the era of the product. And in the era of the product, it was the product that reigned supreme. And so campaigns like Made in the USA and Made in China became campaigns that dominated the product era. Because there was an assumption that if it's made in a particular part of the world, then necessarily it must be a good product. It's a German car. Must be good. That era came to an end. We then moved into the era of probably the past 30 years, the era of the customer. We started saying in an MBA class, like, the customer is king. Now, people misunderstand this, by the way. There is a difference between saying the customer is king and the customer is always right. One of those is a lie. The customer is not always right, but the customer is king. Because the customer has one thing that you may or may not like: agency, choice. They can make a decision not to buy your product. They can. And so in the era of customer, now notice this, I want to go back. In the era of the product, the world became about efficiencies, lean, Six Sigma, manufacturing. And the Japanese and the Asians took over in this era because they could manufacture more efficiently than everybody else. In the era of the customer, marketing took over. Net Promoter Score, CRM, customer campaigns, brand awareness, influencers, real ones, not the ones on Instagram. So we went from the era of being driven by the science, the numbers, the data, running an efficient factory, getting the sausages out quicker than our competitors, to the era where even if we were inefficient at getting our sausages out, as long as we had a better relationship with the customer, we would be more successful. I'm preaching, eh? Yeah. And so what happened? In the era of the product, efficiency-driven products were easier to find and easier to buy. And those companies grew massive scales. In the late 90s, the Chinese became an efficiency-driven economy. And so all of a sudden, they went from making toasters to making cars. And you went from buying a Daewoo toaster to buying a Daewoo car. I still can't understand this, by the way. I would never drive a toaster. But that's just me. Because there was a recognition that they were efficient. In the world of the customer, however, all of a sudden, things like interface and user experience became important. And so who comes into the world of the customer where interface and user experience is important? Designers. And notice the companies today that dominate the global economy. Apple, Amazon, design ethic built into how they construct their businesses. Because all of a sudden the customer actually mattered. Who you are mattered. Well, that shifted too. Because we went from the marketplace to the place where we sell the product to a place where we knew the customer. And now we're at this place. It's the place of singularity. It's the place where the marketplace, the product, and the customer coexist simultaneously every day. It's literally the convergence of the global supply chain. Because in the phone you are carrying, the laptop you are using, the computer you are on, you can access a marketplace that'll know where you are by location, serve you the products you want to buy at the price point you can afford from a supplier who can deliver it to you efficiently. I want you to think about the miracle of what I've just said to you. That in 100 years, we went from you having to wait 30 days to ship a product from one part of the world to where you are, to you can get it in 48 hours.